finally made it. I was an AEE member since 2002. I got my certification in lighting in 2003 and certification as energy auditor 2 years ago. Before joining the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences, you can hear me, right? I was working for Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, where we were doing energy auditing during the time when energy was not such a big issue in Kuwait because of the oil prices, and there was not much high demand. So I'm very glad to be here, and I hope that this presentation will be interactive. Feel free to ask any questions during the presentation. This is the outline of my presentation. I'll go through just the scenario in Kuwait, and then we'll go see what's globally happening, and then zoom in the area and give some solutions for the lighting challenge in Kuwait. Actually, Kuwait is one of the highest countries in per capita consumption. It is around the top 5 with 15 megawatt hour per person per year. And due to the economic boom and the urbanization and building new cities, the demand for energy has become more and more. So the government actually is facing issues in building new power plants. So we've been working with the government to try to save energy and reduce also the peak load, because during the summer we have lots of air conditioning, and the peak load, sometimes the power plants cannot, manage to supply energy for the consumers. The major consumers are air conditioning and lighting. And I saw that in Kofi's presentation yesterday. It's globally. I mean, lighting mostly in any building contributes to around 15% of the load. And this is actually what's happening in Kuwait. As for the air conditioning, it's around 70%. We have only mostly 3 months of winter, so around 9 months of cooling. So this consumes a lot. And from my experience in energy auditing and lighting, we noticed that lighting is the easiest method to reduce energy in a building. In our projects, we easily can save around 20% of the lighting load just by operation and maintenance strategies. During that time, because the energy is highly subsidized, it's around 95% subsidized, so the consumer pays around 5% of the energy. All the retrofits were not economically feasible for the consumers, but from the government side, it was highly recommended. So we were working with the government to do some incentives, to work on incentives for retrofits and incentivize energy efficiency. Although we were the first country in the Middle East to have its own energy conservation code of practice, where we set out minimum energy requirements, mostly for air conditioning, lighting, fenestration, and insulation. Since that time, the code was dormant. It was okay, it was enforced, but we don't know if it was applied properly. So there was no monitoring. And it stayed dormant until around for 15 years. And then it got we started to update it. So the latest update was in 2014. They're working on the 2016-17 version. So this is the minimum requirements for the lighting in different areas and for different purposes. The residential lighting is really much less. They're trying to enforce the 6 watts per meter square for lighting, although I'm still against it, because do we have the market for it or not? Because the lighting market is booming. The energy efficient lighting systems are available, but they're not widely spread, and nobody's really buying them, mostly buying them, especially in homes. Although we'll see in the survey that it's the other way around. So we tried to convince the government since 2004 that to head for the lamps replacement program like other countries around the world. And we did a study, and we found out that if we just distribute free of charge 10 CFL lamps for 100,000 homes, the government can save around $9 million and save the demand on save 22 million megawatts, for in demand sides. we've been every year during the summer where the government is on, like we say, on a crisis because of the peak load, we try to just give them this kind of solution. The lighting has a great effect on the cooling load, so it's a very easy thing to do. It's like politics. Kuwait is a democratic country. We have a parliament. The parliament mostly, I'll talk freely. The parliament is there. They look for the voters' votes, so they don't want the consumers and the people to be affected by any raises or any increases in energy. So for the residential sector, it was still business as usual. However, just recently, the tariff has changed for commercial and government sectors, except for the consumers. So the consumers are not being touched, the residential sector, although it is around 60% of the country's load, the residential sector. Because we were nagging a lot, finally a ministerial order to ban the import of incandescent lamp finally was enforced this year. In March this year, a ban was issued to stop the import of incandescent halogen lamps by August this year. So what's been happening around the world? In the 2000s, in the early millennium, the country started working on banning incandescent lamps and replacing them with the CFLs. Cuba was one of the first countries to do that with a ban and replacement of CFLs. The European Union, they started a gradual ban. USA, since 2012, they banned on 100-watt incandescent lamps was enforced. Vietnam, they replaced all their tubular lamps with T8 and T4 lamps. And South Africa also started the ban by 2016, and hopefully we are working on that. During COP21 in 2015, a clean energy ministerial. It is a forum of around 26 countries, 13 of them outside the European Commission. The forum is to share policies and share best practices to move and accelerate the application of clean energy. They endorse the Global Lighting Challenge. The aim of this Global Lighting Challenge is to deploy 10 billion efficient lamps around the world. Between 2015 and 2016, around 200 million lamps were deployed, which is way below the target. So during the 8th meeting in 2016 in Beijing, China worked properly on distributing these lamps. Okay. So now they have reached the 14 billion lamps, and they are committed to deploy even more. So we want to be a part of that. Although Kuwait is not part of the CEM, we know that United Arab Emirates is, so we can be part of that. Even if we're not in that council, we can do that in Kuwait. So zooming in to the Gulf region, the Gulf cooperation countries are 6 countries: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. The thing about these countries is we all share the same demographics, we all share the same culture, the same background. So these countries got together and we formed the Gulf cooperation countries. We share so many things with each other, and recently we've been sharing codes. So we try to unify our codes based on this region. So I know that I worked on the firefighting code with them, and we're finalizing the energy code for the whole area. These countries were more advanced in applying the energy efficiency practices in Kuwait, because, as I said, we are democratic, so we have so many delays in our applications. So Qatar has really implemented the phase out. The Emirates also, they did the phase out. But we've been, in Kuwait, we've been working for around maybe less than 10 years in a campaign. It's called Tarsheed, means conservation. This is a campaign that's launched by the Ministry of Electricity and Water. They go around in malls and in areas, and they have an awareness program. So we work with them in trying to encourage LEDs. Actually, 2 years ago, when the United Nations celebrated the Year of Light, and we issued a booklet. It's here. How to choose energy efficient lamps. Feel free to take. I kept more copies for all of you. So it's written in Arabic and English. And we're issuing more copies whenever the ministry requires it for their campaigns. It's a simple book. It shows difference between all types of lamps and how to choose them based on color, based on mostly based on their lumens and wattage, because LEDs, they're not like usual lamps, they are light sources. So you cannot buy them like CFLs based on wattage. You have to buy them based on the lumens output. So then finally, as I mentioned earlier, the ministerial order was issued, and they were not reinventing the wheel actually, they were just copying what other countries were doing. The ban was sudden actually, it was not like gradual. So in March we just learned that it was enforced. By August, no more import of incandescent lamps. But as I said, is the market ready? I've been trying to replace all the lamps in my home, and I'm finding difficulty to find proper lamps in the market. So we're still having difficulty in obtaining most of these lights because there was no demand. So now the market will be booming. To make sure that, or to just understand how the people are coping with this, and if they are aware of this ban, we did a survey for 120 participants. It had 17 questions. 10 of them were about lamps and the replacements, and these other 7 questions were demographic. So they're mostly middle-aged group, although now I know that between the 40s and 50s, it's not middle age anymore. It's called now the young age. It's been announced worldwide that between 40 and 50 you're still young, and we are still young. Most of them were like middle-aged. The first question was, which type of lamping do you prefer? So we found out that everybody prefers LEDs, although I know that they're not widely spread, but many people prefer LEDs. Although from our experience, we know that many homes have halogen lamps. People use halogen lamps as general lighting, although we are not recommending that. But many people found out because of the heat emittance, they had to change halogen to LEDs. As for their decision, why do they buy lamps? We were surprised to know that many of them, around 50%, were thinking of energy conservation. So they don't care about the price, not the lumens output, energy conservation. However, not all of them knew about the lamp lighting effect on the cooling load. So mostly half of them do not know how lighting affects the cooling load. From these 120 persons, almost 85 of them actually buy LEDs. So this is a good thing. Why are they buying LEDs? They buy them for energy saving. Most of them buy it for energy saving. So now we know that the price is not an issue. People are buying LEDs and buying lamps, having energy savings as their first priority. And when they were asked, what is the main incentive or motivation for you to replace your lamps replacement? Is it if the government provides them for free, or as give them in a subsidized price, or without anything? Mostly, it was almost equal. Some people prefer the subsidized price. Some of them, they said it doesn't matter. So this way we know that price is not a matter. However, not all of them know about the lamp ban, although it was issued in the newspapers, it was it was everywhere, but not many of them know about the light ban. This is a tricky one. From the earlier one, from here, we asked those who knew about, if you knew about the lighting ban, would you replace or not yet? So some of those who did not know also replied. So the big chunk, the 56%, are those who said no in the earlier parts, and they also said no, that they did not replace. However, some, around 17% of that 35%, they did a partial replacement, and around 16% of them did a whole replacement. So this is a good thing. So we know that we are ready for the global lighting challenge in Kuwait. However, the females knew less about the lighting ban than males, which is a bit surprising. But I think because mostly in our culture, men meet usually in places we call diwaniyas. If you heard about, they have main gatherings, and they talk about issues around the country. So this is maybe why men knew more about the lighting ban. So the study that we did in 2004, we reflected it now in the present time. So we did another study. If we replace the 60-watt incandescent lamps with the 6-watt LEDs, what is the impact on that on the government? And these are our assumptions. The cost actually of energy for the government is around $0.1, which is around 10 cents. They reflect the effect on the CO2 mitigations also. We assume that all the lamps are operating between around 6 hours per day all year round. And the cost of LED in the market is around $10 now. And we calculated also the effect of on replacing the lamps on the peak load. We assume that 30% of the lamps in the home are on during the peak load. And the cost of power of building a power plant is around $990 per kilowatt. So this is the whole results. We know that we will have around 54 megawatt power savings, and that will save around $53 million. This is avoided cost on building a new power plant. As for the energy savings, it's around 120,000 megawatt hour per year, which is around $12 million per year for the government. The payback period is around a year. It's a bit less than a year. So this is a very attractive solution for the government to start working on deploying CFLs. Actually, where I work, the flagship projects program in the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences, we try to deploy technologies that are proving. We're working with the government on doing some pilot projects to deploy technologies that are proving all around the world. For example, we did around 150 homes as a pilot study replacing and rooftop PV. We're working on water conservation projects, so we can work with the government on doing like a small-scale pilot study to replace the LEDs in homes. So finally, we know that we really need a public awareness campaign in the country for the lamps replacement ban, and also for people to know about the regulation and the choices that they have in the market. In Kuwait, we have urban centers where they have some co-ops, cooperative, marketplaces, and areas where they can go to do the shopping. We can have the awareness programs there. We know that the females are lower. Their awareness is lower than the males. We should increase that. And also the lamps price is not a major issue for the consumers. So we know that it can be easily replaced. It's an attractive solution for the government to do a lamp replacement program, and we can work with the government in doing a pilot study, and we can adopt this national scenario. And this is how we can do that for the Kuwait Global Lighting Challenge. Finally, I'd just like to say that I always end my presentations in a quote. So in order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness has to be present. We should have a crisis, actually, to have a good solution. Thank you.
Thank you.